Hey folks, Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner out of Onondaga County. Welcome to Commissioner in a Car, not in a car. Unfortunately, my car is in the shop, so this week's edition is being come to you from my lovely home studio. But today is Tuesday. It is September 26th. It happens to be my birthday. And welcome to this week's Commissioner in a Car, where we'll be talking about legislation and litigation that was happened last week while I was away at the Pledge Conference in LA. I did a lot, also I was last week, because I was away at the Pledge Conference in LA, I didn't do as much content. I did a reel almost every day, or TikTok. I'm now on TikTok. Sorry, I'm trying it out. We'll see how it goes. But I did a reel or TikTok every day to just kind of talk about what was going on at the pledge. And then I also did a couple of reels this weekend about the manliest special election. So check all that out. I'm back on my regular content this week, starting with this Commissioner in a Car, although not in a car. And then on Thursday, I will get back to my Zoom with Zarni with the Geddestown candidates and weekly wonk this weekend with OCL 6. I'm starting to run out of time for the general election, so I'm going to try to get everything done that I want to get done before the general election. So wish me luck. No more times off for me to be able to get everybody on that I want to get on, so you can make your choices this November. That being said, there was, and just a real touch on that manly special election. Check out my reel on that. I spent about 4 or 5 minutes talking about why I felt that was so impactful, why there was so much turnout, and what happened, and how our staff did, which I think our staff did great. It was a lot of turnout. Maybe could have used an extra polling place, but also why it was put in September on a Saturday as opposed to the November election, which was the design and plan of the authors of the petition that tried to force this decision on the town. So, check that out, and because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today. But what I will spend time on is the litigation and legislation that happened this last week that you may not have known about. Because early last week, while I was away, I did the Governor Hochul. She signed several pieces of election administration bills. I'm pulling it up on my computer here, so sorry I'm not looking straight at the camera. She pulled up several pieces of legislation that will have impact for this election this year and the elections next year. I'll go over a few of those real quick and then go in depth on a couple of others. First one was a bill that the envelopes that are submitted on for absentee ballots. There was many different objections on those for envelopes that were taped instead of sealed with your tongue or otherwise, and we allowed, and some boards allowed the tape, some boards did not, and so there was a bill put in that allowed tape on the envelopes as long as it was tamper evidence free. So that is a small bill, but important. There was a bill that amended the correction law that allowed for voter registration and required notice to persons released from local jails. This is mainly on the jails to do this, but when they're released from local jails, it lets them know that they can get their registration back upon release, and they can register to vote again. There was the presidential primary bill. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this that bill because there's a lot of things in that bill that isn't about the presidential primary that's going to affect this year, but mostly that bill slated the date for April 2nd officially for next year's presidential primary. There was a bill relating to challenges of constitutions and the provision of election law. This is a bill that basically said you can no longer forum shop for lawsuits. You can't go to some heavy Republican or heavy Democratic jurisdiction. You have to go to the highest 8 jurisdictions in New York State to be able to challenge any law in court. This was basically coming out of the litigation, but also around redistricting. But also, there's been plenty of litigation regarding absentee ballots, which we're going to get into in a little bit. That this will change. So there is that. And then there is requiring electors to vote for the presidential elector, the false elector bill. This will prevent any elector that is slated when the people choose whoever their president is in November. If an elector is sent to the Electoral College, they must vote the way that the people chose of the state of New York chose. So that's an important bill. A mandatory training curriculum for inspectors. This creates an institute at the State Board of Elections, which is basically a train-the-trainer type of situation where Board of Elections across the state will have to send their trainers who develop their curriculum for inspectors. That's a great bill. It's going to standardize training of poll inspectors throughout the state, although it won't be standard. It'll be standardizing objectives of the training, because you'll still have local procedures, so your local training will still be local. Student voter registration was another one that she signed. This encourages the high schools to work with the Board of Elections that work with the Board of Elections that will help register 17 and 18-year-olds as they're graduating, and 16-year-olds, because 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register now. They will have to develop curriculum to work with the Board of Elections to get voter registration into the boards of elections. Another bill that basically put into practice put into law what we had in practice for registration of voters on the first day of early voting. Why was that important is because the legislature reduced the number of days for the registration cutoff to be 10 days, and that happens to be the first day of early voting. And so this put into law what many put into practice during the primary, that if you go to an early voting center on the first day, the first Saturday, and are not registered, you can not only register, but you can also vote by affidavit and ballot at the same time, and those will be counted. That is what's called the Golden Day. And so what a lot of activists are calling the Golden Day. I expect to hear a lot more of that in the upcoming early voting cycles that are coming up. And then always establish a deadline for changing the location of a polling place for early voting. So it basically says that about 48 hours before early voting, you can't change the early voting polling place location unless you have a natural disaster. There wasn't any legislation on that, and they want to prevent boards of elections from doing last-minute moves, and that is arbitrary. So there's that bill. And then establishing the New York Early Mail Voting Act. That is basically establishing a new procedure for voting by mail. It's called Vote Early by Mail. And that is the subject of litigation. and so what this will do is basically have a method of mail voting that is non-excused. So right now, absentee balloting is excuse-based in New York, and there was a constitutional amendment to try to change that. That failed in 2021. However, following the procedures that were done in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, who also have excuse-based absentee voting, they established a new form of early voting by mail. Now, this won't be effect till 2024, and you cannot. If there's no permanent list on this, you're not like absentees. You have a permanent list. So if you decide you permanently want to vote by mail because of an infirmity or some other excuse, you can do that by absentee. Early voting by mail, you have to apply for each and every year. It'll start in 2024 for the 2024 presidential primary, and it will create a new class of mail for this, or new class of mail balloting for this. But that's and then of course a few other things I want to talk about in the April 2nd primary bill. It wasn't just a primary bill because it also put in a lot of little small tweaks to election law that weren't really, we wanted change to make things better for elections, but it didn't really, nobody wanted to put in a bill on that. One of the things was cures for absentee ballots. We were under litigation last couple federal years, where if a bill or if an absentee ballot comes in without a postmark after Election Day, that we were under court order to do a cure, where we send a cure notice out to the voters, and that cure notice was then returned, where they swore an affidavit that they mailed it before Election Day. This is important because many times the post office just doesn't put a postmark on a ballot, and they may have mailed it the day before Election Day or on Election Day, but that with the lack of postmark, if it came in a couple days late, which mails sometimes come in several days late after you mail it now, through no fault of the voter, their ballots were being thrown out. So this is an important tweak there. There's a few other little tweaks in there, like making sure that the hand count proceeds after the final canvass of absentees. This gives a little bit more order to the hand count. You may remember that Onondaga County had a huge hand count last year, and part of the problem with that hand count, especially in Oswego County, but even with our county, it didn't have an order of when we were supposed to start the hand count. So, and sometimes, some counties throughout the state were starting the hand count while they were still canvassing absentees, which created a longer, drawn-out process and a more confusing process, because how can you do the hand count if the first initial ballots aren't officially counted? So this creates a established order for that hand count. So again, a lot of small, minor things that were put into that presidential primary bill that are good for voters, but a lot of legislators didn't want to put them into separate bills and vote on them separately, so they voted on them all together with the April 2nd primary bill. So that's the legislation portion of Commissioner in a Car. Real quick question from our friend David Harding. Is it dangerous to not allow presidential electors to vote for someone else? What if the person who won dies or becomes incapacitated or is totally unfit for office? But that's the whole point of the bill, is that the voters have chosen them fit for office. So the electors are supposed to reflect the will of the voters of the state. So the unfit for office is a subjective placement, and I reject the Electoral College altogether. But if we're going to have the Electoral College, it should reflect the will of the voters of the state. Now, if a person dies or becomes incapacitated, there are ways to assign those electors to someone else, probably the vice president of that ticket. In that case, those are rare cases that would allow for, but that would be dealt with in the courts, and of course in the the assumption of the ballot spot in that case. So if somebody dies in that window between November 2nd and January 6th, where they inaugurate the president, there are already procedures in place for that, and and actually it would be between then and when the electors vote, not January 6th, because that's when the electoral votes are received, but it's sometime in December, so it's like a 3 or 4 week window. Let's hope nobody dies. That might be a true constitutional crisis there, in not just the states with this law, but with every state, because I think it would then be assumed that it's going to go to the vice presidential candidate of that party, but that would be something that is unprecedented, and we'll have to hear more from the states about how that would happen if it did. Now I'm going to get into the litigation portion of this session, because there was 2 pieces of litigation filed by the New York State GOP and New York State conservatives and all of the top-ranking New York State GOP around absentee ballot voting. We are back at this again. The national GOP has said that they're encouraging absentee voting and early voting now, and they want their members to do it. But that message seems to have fallen short of the New York State GOP, because there are 2 pieces of litigation that are actually attacking absentee voting. One of them is attacking the pre-canvass of absentees. They tried this last year. They failed at the court challenge last year because they brought it so late that we were already opening absentee ballots in 2022. And I'll talk about that litigation first. And this was brought last year. It kind of created a crisis across the state, where several Republican GOP commissioners were under the impression that there was a stay and were not opening up absentee ballots as they were required to do. And then there was an initial ruling by a judge in Saratoga County that struck down the pre-canvass ruling, but that was immediately appealed and overturned at the Court of Appeals. And there was a stay issued while that was happening, which meant we were supposed to be opening absentee ballots, and that created an additional constitutional crisis where people were not opening the ballots, and then finally, a few days later, once the Attorney General informed them that they had to, they were doing so. So you may say, well, why did they wait so long then what happened there is the Court of Appeals said basically it's too late in the election cycle to decide this election. Latches is the legal term for this, and they applied latches to it, and they said that it's too late. They threw out the lawsuit, said bring it again next year. So you may ask why they waited until September of next year instead of January to file this litigation again. That's a good question. It should be asked of the New York State GOP why it's okay. They were okay with having another primary with this the pre-canvass of absentees in place, which means that we count absentees before Election Day so we can report the results on Election Night, and that it eliminates all the objections to absentee ballots by private citizens. It has to be done by the bipartisan teams at the Board of Elections. And so why would they allow another primary to go through with this in place? It's a good question. But they did. They waited till September, but it was an interesting wrinkle on this litigation, because they, again, waited way too late to bring this lawsuit for 2023. So they asked for the relief on this lawsuit, again, brought by the New York State GOP. They asked for their relief on this lawsuit for 2024. So they want this process ruled unconstitutional, and they want the relief for 2024. So they're again going to allow the 2023 general election to happen, and then have this relief in 2024. So if you hear about any rulings on this, it won't be until the 2024 election those rulings go into place. I believe, and I advocated for, and filed an affidavit on behalf of the New York State Board of Elections that that our process is sound and fair, and we had no issues with absentee ballots that were challenged or even challenged by either side of the Board of Elections, because we had a great process in place to be able to detect any absentee ballots that were improper and get them part of the cure process, and then eventually count those ballots when the cures come in. So I believe that this will be ruled constitutional, but the judges are going to rule on that. And again, by the time the judge, the final, I'm sure this will be appealed no matter what the ruling is. But once the final, ruling on this is done, we will have 3 primaries and 2 general elections with this process in place, without any hint or evidence of fraud taking place, and that would necessitate the need for objecting to ballots by private citizens after the election, delaying results for 2 to 3 weeks because of what the New York State GOP wants. And then the other piece of litigation is, and this is really being again the New York State GOP, but Elise Stefanik and a whole bunch of other top Republicans put in litigation on the early vote by mail act. The ink was not even dry on the signature of Governor Hochul for the early voting by mail act, and they already decided to challenge it. They had the lawsuit ready to go. They were ready to challenge it, and they're basically saying that a mail ballot by any other name is still an absentee ballot and thus prevented in the Constitution. And there was a vote in 2021 to have no excuse, and it failed, so you're subverting the will of the voters. That's what they're saying. This litigation, again, will not be effective until 2024. That, ironically, had to be filed in Albany, whereas the challenge to the absentee suit came before the bill signings that happened last Wednesday, and which which basically said any constitutional arguments cannot be forum shopped, and what's called the Amador, the litigation against the pre-canvass of absentees, was filed in Saratoga County, where they did a forum shop for a GOP-friendly judge, and there's already been the first judge had to step aside because they had too many recent ties to the local GOP there. So then it was assigned to the same judge that heard the case last year as well, that ruled against it, but now we'll be ruling for the new ruling with the Court of Appeals, and also even more evidence that this is a good process, the pre-canvass. But the early voting by mail is also being challenged. That's going to go on in the Albany court now, thanks to the new legislation that they had to file in Albany. So we've had all this legislation. We got this litigation. Most of it is about effective for 2024. There's some small pieces of legislation that is not under litigation that will be effective for 2023, which I outlined. And so that's what's happened this week. So that's really all I got for Commissioner in a Car. Absentee ballots are being mailed out as we speak to all of our absentee voters in Onondaga County, about 5,600 absentee voters for the general election that are either permanent or have already requested an absentee. If you need an absentee for the general election, go to onvote.net. You can apply online, and we will send you an absentee if you're going to be infirmed or out of the county, or several other categories of valid excuses that are available on the application when you do the application. You can also come into our office at the Board of Elections and pick one up and do one-stop shopping, where you pick up a ballot and vote that same day. So that is happening right now for the general election. As I said, I will be back on my content schedule. So Thursday, I will be doing a Commissioner in the Car again. Thursday I'll be doing a Zoom with Zarni again with the Geddes Town Council candidates. I was hoping to have that up last week, but I'm I was running behind, but I'm going to be doing that this week. I will also be doing a weekly walk again this weekend with OCL 7. Onondaga County Legislative District 7 will be up this weekend. And I'm going to be on a very tight schedule to get everything done that I want to get done for the November election. So I'm hoping to not have any weeks off. I may have to even double up some weeks on my Zoom with Zarnies and weekly walks to get enough stuff done before the general election. So again, go to onvote.net and go ahead and make sure that you get registered, and if you need an absentee ballot for the general election, that is coming up just a few weeks away. All right, bye-bye. Take care.